Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jessica Ward King, the Stigma Crusher here. So this morning, it was freezing where I live. Absolutely freezing, like minus 19, minus 26 with wind chill, and I had to leave for work in the wee hours of the morning to catch the bus in the freezing cold. And it was dark and it was very unpleasant. And when I came home from work, it was dark again, and I spent the whole day inside at work, and I saw no sun today. And most of my days when I spend them in the office are like that. And, you know, this past Monday was, well, the last Monday anyways, was Blue Monday. And that historically has been the Monday that they say has the lowest mood of the year. And that's been tied to, you know, the Monday after Christmas when all of the credit card bills start coming in, and it's, you know, it's after Christmas, after the holidays, and people are back into the swing of things and finding that, you know, they're outside of their holidays and things are not looking good, and now their credit card bills come in, and monetarily, you know, financially wise, things are not looking good, and that's when reality really hits, and that's when, you know, the January blues, or that Blue Monday hits. And there's not a lot of science to back that up. It's really more of an urban legend, this Blue Monday. But something that's not an urban legend is seasonal affective disorder, that affects up to, in some small way at least, up to 15% of the population. A seasonal variation in mood does. Seasonal affective disorder outright affects maybe 5% of the population. And seasonal affective disorder is a subset of, it's a mood disorder. It's a subset of depression that affects people when seasons change. Now, generally, when we think of seasonal affective disorder, we think of the subtype where your mood starts to slip in the fall and it's bad over the winter, and then when the spring comes, your mood kind of just magically lifts, and over the spring and summer you don't have any mood symptoms, or you have very few or residual mood symptoms. And that's kind of the classic seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, symptom profile. But there is also another seasonal affective disorder symptom profile that actually hits the other way around, that kind of conversely hits more. It starts to creep up on you when the spring comes, and hits more full force during the summer, and that's when the depression is in full force. And then during the fall and winter, that's when the mood symptoms resolve. And so that is the alternate version of seasonal affective disorder, no less disruptive, but a little bit less common. Now, seasonal affective disorder is a type of depression, and so it comes with the same types of symptoms of depression. So you'll get feeling depressed most of the day, nearly all the time. You'll get anhedonia, which is, you know, not getting pleasure out of things that normally would cause you to have pleasure. You can get suicidal ideation and thoughts of suicide. You can get cognitive symptoms, so, you know, thinking more slowly than usual, not being able to concentrate as well as usual. You get definitely symptoms that relate to eating and sleeping. So with the winter and fall subtype of seasonal affective disorder, you get cravings for carbohydrates and eating carbohydrate-rich foods, and weight gain. And you get sleeping too much, sleeping a lot, sleeping all the time, often going to bed long before you would normally go to bed, and wanting to stay in bed long after your alarm goes off. With the subtype that has you having the depression in the summer and spring, you would have poor appetite, so not wanting to eat much or at all, and often weight loss, and trouble sleeping, so not wanting to sleep, or not wanting to sleep, but not being able to sleep. And so you'll see that there's a slight difference in the symptomatology of these two subtypes. And the reason for this difference, and the reason for these different symptoms that you'll see with seasonal affective disorder, is because of the actual reason for the disorder. So it's a disorder of your circadian rhythm, right? So when the light starts changing in the summer or in the spring or in the fall, that's when the amount of light that your body starts to receive from your ambience, from your surroundings, starts to change. So when you start to get less or more light from your surroundings, that's when your body is forced to adapt to that changing light, right? So for someone that doesn't suffer from seasonal affective disorder, you have to adapt to that change in, the changing clocks, or you have to adapt to the sudden the gradual, I guess, change in amount of sunlight that you're getting. When you have seasonal affective disorder, your body has trouble adapting to that change in sunlight. And so you get a phase shift. You get where your body isn't adapted to the amount of sunlight it's getting, and so you get out of sync with your surroundings. And for reasons that are poorly understood, that lack of synchronicity with your surroundings causes mood symptoms. And some of the reasons we think might have something to do with it are serotonin production. So we know that amount of sunlight changes serotonin production. And also melatonin production. So we know also that the amount of sunlight that you receive changes melatonin production. And a synchronicity in the amount of serotonin and or melatonin production probably have something to do with the reason that this change in the amount of sunlight you're getting and this asynchronicity with your biological clock is causing this mood symptomatology to develop. And it's really quite disruptive to the people that struggle with it. Now you might think, wow, people that just know that they have to deal with depression for a couple of seasons, but then it's going to resolve, it's going to lift. Wouldn't that be great? I know that before I knew much about mental health and mental illness, I know I would have thought that way. I would have thought, wow, geez, wouldn't that be great if I knew it was going to lift? If I had a time limit on this thing and I knew it was going to lift, I could at least plan for something. But the issue isn't knowing when it's going to lift. The issue is knowing that it's going to recur constantly, like clockwork, and that you can never enjoy a season. You can never enjoy anything because you know that it's constantly going to recur and it's constantly going to come back. And it's like it's constantly hanging over your head. Now, I don't have seasonal affective disorder, but I have something similar, which is bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder is also a disorder of chronology. It's also a disorder of my biological clock that's constantly going to recur. And so I think I have a little bit of an insight into what might be going on. And so I have empathy for what people with seasonal affective disorder are going through. And I can only imagine knowing that, you can never enjoy a fall and winter season. You can never enjoy Christmas, for example, because you're always going to have depression that season. It's always going to be that way. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, right? There are some things that you can do for seasonal affective disorder. For example, because you know that it is coming, you can start treatments before it actually hits so that you can get the treatments on board to hopefully stave it off. So you can start treatments with antidepressants. For example, Wellbutrin seems to be one that works particularly well for people with seasonal affective disorder. Not for everyone, but in general, it seems to be one that works well. And you get that on board before your seasonal affective disorder usually hits, and you keep it on board after it would usually lift. So you get it in there before it hits, and you keep it on board until after to make sure you keep the depression away. Another thing that is really super helpful for people with seasonal affective disorder is chronotherapy, and that is sleep therapy. So I know I go on and on this channel about sleep hygiene and going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every day and whatnot. But that's really important for people with seasonal affective disorder. But another thing that's really important is light therapy, and that's one of the chronotherapies that they use. And so using a light box. And for people with seasonal affective disorder that's not complicated by something like bipolar disorder, because, by the way, people with bipolar disorder are more likely to have seasonal affective disorder than are people without bipolar disorder. I don't have it, but people with bipolar are more likely to have it. But anyway, if you're complicated by bipolar, this is not the advice for you. But if you are not complicated by bipolar, then using a light box first thing in the morning within the first 2 hours of waking up is absolutely transformative for people with seasonal affective disorder, because it resets that biological clock. It gets it, how I said it's kind of phase shifted, it's off kilter. It's like a clock that's not quite set right on the right time. It resets the clock every day. Every day that clock needs resetting, and if you use the light box every day, like clockwork, it resets that clock every day. And by resetting that clock, it'll reset, whatever biological mechanism it is that's causing that clock to cause your mood to be shifted. It's resetting that biological mechanism as well, and thereby it's creating the place in your body for the mood to be regulated. And they find that even without using other biological mechanisms, like without using medication or any other thing, just using light therapy is absolutely transformative for people with seasonal affective disorder. So don't do anything without consulting your medical practitioner first, because, as I say, for some people with some conditions like bipolar disorder, but other conditions as well, using a light box can be dangerous. So definitely consult your medical practitioner first. That's being your doctor, your psychiatrist, any medical practitioner that you're seeing to treat your seasonal affective disorder. But once you've consulted your medical practitioner, a light box might be the thing to ask them about, even before medication. Often, though, they'll use a light box in conjunction with medication to make sure that you're getting the maximum benefit of your treatment. So seasonal affective disorder is real. Not everyone that has seasonal variation in mood has seasonal affective disorder, though. So I mentioned at the beginning that up to 15% of people will have kind of a seasonal variation in mood. Even kids can have this seasonal variation in mood. Even kids can have seasonal affective disorder. Like this isn't the purview of just adults, right? But not everybody that has this seasonal variation in mood has full-blown seasonal affective disorder. But you don't have to have full-blown seasonal affective disorder to benefit from some kinds of interventions. So other interventions you can use to treat a seasonal affective disorder are just things like simply getting sunlight during the day, taking walks outside in nature during the day, making sure you get sunlight first thing in the morning. So if it's at all possible to take a walk in the sun at breakfast or like when you get up, if you can work or do whatever you do in the morning, take your breakfast, do your exercise, whatever it is that you do in the morning, by a window. It doesn't have to be literally outside in the elements. Like if you're living in a very cold climate like I am today, I would not have wanted to take a walk outside in the sunlight voluntarily. I had to take a walk outside. It wasn't in the sunlight, unfortunately, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it voluntarily. But even just getting yourself by the window and working by the window, as much sunlight as you can is good for you when you're having seasonal variation in mood. Getting exercise. I know I harp on and on about exercise on this channel as well, but it is absolutely transformative for all mood disorders, but for seasonal affective disorder and seasonal variation in mood as well. Getting that exercise can be really, really helpful in boosting mood. Making sure you're getting a really balanced diet, because we mentioned that with seasonal variation in mood, you can be craving carbohydrates, you can be gaining weight, and making sure that you're getting a balanced diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, with lots of the whole grains rather than carbohydrate dense foods, really important. Making sure that you get social. So another thing that can happen with seasonal variation in mood is that you can tend to hibernate. And with wanting to go to bed early and stay in bed late, you can tend to stay away from social encounters. So getting yourself out there and staying social, really important when you're having a seasonal variation in mood. It's really important with all mood disorders and with just low mood in general. So all really good advice either way. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you are finding yourself in a slump, whether you think you have seasonal affective disorder, seasonal variation in mood, just a case of the winter blahs, the January blahs, all of these pieces of advice are good pieces of advice. Make sure that if you find that you are thinking that you are having a mood slump that is maybe a little bit more than just a slump, just the January blahs, take yourself to the doctor. Don't let it go on too long, right? If you're finding that you are feeling low, depressed, having low mood most of the time, almost every day for a couple of weeks, if you're finding that you're not enjoying things that you usually enjoy, if you're finding that you're having trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, if you're finding that you're having trouble eating or eating too much, concentration's difficult, especially if you're finding that you're having thoughts of death or thoughts of suicide, any of these kinds of symptoms, and if they're going on, especially if they're going on for a couple of weeks or more, take yourself to the doctor, get yourself checked out. They'll probably go through a physical exam, maybe take some blood tests, make sure your thyroid's okay, vitamin D's okay, and ask you some questions about your mental health, about how you've been feeling, about how you've been doing. Make sure there are no, stressors that are ongoing that might be explaining your mood, and then talk to you about some options. Talk to you about some of these things that you can do yourself. Meditation that you might be able to do, if you might be able to try yoga, you might be able to try an exercise routine, things that are, we talked a couple of weeks ago about cheap and free things that you can do for your mental health, things that don't cost you any money. There are lots of things that you can do to take control of your own mental health that aren't medication, that aren't an expensive gym membership, that aren't an expensive therapy bill. And then they might talk to you about those things too, things like getting a therapist or trying medication. So don't let it go on for too long if you're finding that you are in a slump. It is normal to have these kinds of slumps from time to time, to keep that in mind, but don't let it go on too long. All right, take care of yourself this week, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.
Stigma Crusher.